In recent times, Nigeria has seen a notable increase in inflation rates, which has raised concerns among citizens and experts alike. The rising cost of food, goods and services poses a significant challenge to the daily lives and financial stability of Nigerians. A lot of Nigerians are lamenting the misfortunes that have befallen the country and wonder why inflation is soaring and where to. But then, what does this all mean in economics? Well, inflation is a measure of the general increase in prices over the eroding the purchasing power of consumers. According to analysts, the current inflationary trend in Nigeria has been fueled by various factors, including currency depreciation, supply chain disruptions, and increased production costs. Now, this effect of inflation is felt in many aspects of daily lives. Basic necessities such as food and petrol for cars and transportation have become more expensive, placing an additional burden on families and individuals already struggling to make ends meet in a country rich with natural and human resources capable of influencing market forces and trading system activities. This situation has not gone unnoticed by the Nigerian government, and overcoming inflation requires a collective effort from all sectors of society. It is also crucial for policymakers, economists, and experts to continue monitoring and analyzing the situation, seeking sustainable solutions to stabilize the economy and curb inflation rates. While the current increase in inflation has undoubtedly presented challenges for Nigerians, what work is on the table towards achieving price stability and allowing people to thrive in a more stable economic environment? We will be examining this and more as we discuss the inflation rate surge in Nigeria. I am Eucharia Clinton. Thanks for joining us. This is Nigeria Today. Now, with us in the studio is Dr. Tochukwu Okafor. He's an economic analyst and a senior lecturer with Bayes University, Abuja. So welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you, Kerry.
It's always a pleasure to have you.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
And also with us in the studio is also an economist and a public affairs analyst, Yushau Ali. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you and good evening.
You know it's always a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, I will start with you, Yushau. Reason being that Dr. Tochukwu had so many time in on this program, predicted the soaring inflation rate we have in now. So, does this increase the rate of inflation presently surprise you?
It's not a surprise. Like you rightly pointed out, Dr. Tochukwu has predicted. It's not a prediction, it's projected. You look at what is obtained in the economy, you look at the economic parameters on ground, and you now check the supply and production costs in the economy, then you realize that when you look at the size of the economy, that is looking at the population, looking at the demands of the population, looking at the effective demand of the population, looking at their income, you realize that the purchasing power is no longer assisting households. There is no household that is not in crisis in one way or the other. Just like pointed out before this program by Dr. Tochukwu, if you have an additional baby, it's an additional cost. So when you realize not only having a baby, now even if a baby is graduating probably to a crèche or a nursery, it's additional cost. Prices are changing. Not only food items, not only educational cost, not only transport costs. Nearly every cost is changing, from production cost to consumption cost.
Dr. Tochukwu, I know we've pointed out some factors that led to these inflation rates now, but are there some specific factors that we've not mentioned that you think also is contributing greatly to these recent increase in inflation?
Okay, for starters, there's no factor we'll mention that is new, but they evolve, right? And I think the trifecta of crises that are eating into the macroeconomic space now are we have the food inflation, energy inflation, and then the FX market. I think these are the major ones that we're having problems with. So for starters, let's start with, let's go back to the concept again. We know background now. We heard that the US, UK, and Ghana's inflation, even India and China, that their inflation rates dropped by, at least UK dropped by more than half on the back of the Prime Minister's promise to around 4% or a little above 4%. US 3.2. Now, the problem is we have the definition of economics, which is excess money pursuing fewer goods, right? In 2021, our money supply growth was around 17%. 2022, it rose to, no, it was 14%. 2022, it rose to 17.5. Currently, we're on 36%. You already know that that's a crisis in itself, right? Now, with that already said, if you look at what happened in the UK, or let's go to Ghana. Let's go with Ghana. Ghana's inflation rate dropped from 38%, a little above 38,
35.
to 35. The reason why it dropped is because their money supply growth dropped from 45% to 40%. Statistics show it, it's there. Also, their fiscal balance also improved. I think they're around 11% now. We are on 0.6, 0.7%. Right? When you look at these statistics, I don't like doing numbers because, I mean, I need people to understand the reality of things. But the truth about it is what it's saying is that the excess money outside the system, no matter how much we hear that the CBN is increasing MPR, that is just an anchor rate. The thing that will make that MPR work is when the OMO, at least recently we've heard that the OMO operations have started, or the OMO rates have started approaching close to that anchor rate. That is the significant, is an identification that if you don't come close to this rate, you're wasting time trying to fight inflation. Because if you're having treasury bills, 1 year treasury bills at 11%, 11.5, and MPR is 18%, it's not working. But now they're coming closer, right? I think they're coming to that realization. And then for the FX market, so I don't take up too much time, I think we'll talk about that. But these three factors, right? The food inflation, energy inflation, because the prices of energy, right now you're seeing that flight prices are ridiculous. I mean, it's more than some people's 3-month salary, right? You have energy crisis, you have food inflation, which is soaring more than 15% of the total inflation, and then you're having the FX market contribute. So I don't want to speak so much. I want my colleague to also speak. But these are some of the major challenges that are actually pushing the inflation rate further and higher than we are actually anticipating.
Usually, the figure marks the 10th consecutive rise in the country's inflation rate this year. And I know Dr. Tochku will say, stay counting. I know that is what he's saying right now. Yes.
Yes,
So,
of course.
I don't know. He just rightly mentioned the UK. Earlier this year, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, had promised that he will halve the inflation rate from 10.7% of last quarter, last quarter of 2022 to
4 points.
Last quarter of this year. He said he was even projecting 4.8. At the end of the day, it's 4.6. That's a very remarkable decrease there. So ours has marked the 10th consecutive rise. I don't know.
It has become behavioral. That is an inflation.
How did we get to this point, really?
We get to this point because of wrong policies, wrong attitude. Inflation is a surge that requires certain measures to control. The first target being the central bank, rightly pointed out by Tochku. You cannot just rely on MPR. Monetary policy rate, of course, but it depends on many other factors for you to control it, because no parameter that you use in economic that is not based on certain provisions. These provisions must be achieved for you to have the target. The economy has a target growth rate. The economy has a target in inflation growth rate. The economy has a target of even selling the crude oil as projected. So once you have the projection, if you are not achieving this projection, then definitely something is going to fight back your policies of stabilizing the economy. What do you need to stabilize food inflation? By increasing production. But is the cost of input relatively good for that economy? Definitely not. So no matter what input you tend to consider in making production in agri, if the cost is high, definitely the output is going to be high, and that is inflation. That is one. Second, supply bottlenecks. Ease of doing business is mostly considered as a good policy. You consider taxes in most of the input. If you consider high taxes in all this input, definitely it's going to fight back, to translate back in the output price. And these are the things that we have been harboring for a very long period. Please, Central Bank, consider the target of and the size of the economy. If you want this economy to produce enough, for instance, cereals, rice, if you want us to produce enough, at what cost? And if you produce at good cost, then how do you now distribute? It also has a cost. Distribution cost, you take rice that is produced in Maiduguri to Calabar, you have a cost, and it's definitely going to translate. And that is why today, very unfortunate, I am not happy with the release of the report by the NBS that shows that Kogi has the highest inflation of above 39% in food. Why? Are they not farmers? Does that mean that all the Kogi people, because of election, have moved back to Kogi in an attempt to just have 1 or 2 political gain and then consume all the food in Kogi? These are some of the things that we consider: the migration of people, the movement of goods and services, the price at which cost of production is being considered. Not only that, the policies that will attract additional supplies in the market. Remember, since we started experiencing this problem, we have argued it out. There is nowhere in the world that you block all your borders and you don't have the capacity and you are not regulating the production and the marketing of that product, and you expect price to be stable. Some people will come and hijack. It's a nature of capitalists. Anytime they are looking for profit, they capitalize on what will give them maximum. So if you now close your borders and say you must produce, then definitely capital will take over, and that is what transpired. Not only that, what is the production, the environment, the production zones? How safe is our production zones? Notwithstanding, probably because of one crisis or the other, you realize that farmers are taken out of their farms and you have low supplies. When you have low supply, the supply bottlenecks begins from there. Where you have low supplies, then what are the market? And when you have market nearby consuming, you look at the size of the population. Nigeria, all this inflation that are being controlled in the US and UK, probably is as a result they were very keen in understanding the size of the population, the income grouping of the population, and also the capacity of the economy. And that is why you can easily control it. Look at the Nigerian economy, for instance. Just of a sudden, prices changes of transport. Transport is a multiplier in distributing goods and services within the entire economy. Immediately that changes appears. In 2019, let me take you back. In 2019, inflation was just 11.04%. While today, from 2019,
we have 27.
You have 27 points. So even if you take year on year, looking into consideration the consequence of relativity in terms of increase, September to October, you realize the changes. It cannot be taken by the consumers, because most of the consumers are moving on a very unstable income levels. And when you have unstable income and you have consistent inflation, then definitely there is going to be a lot of crisis that has to do with even the economic nature of the states.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, right now let's take a listen to feel the pulse of Nigerians on this soaring inflation rate. Don't go away.
When you depend on what others can produce and bring to you. So as the tariff goes high, it affects every product. But if we can produce our own food, produce what we can use in Nigeria, encourage our farmers, encourage industrialization, encourage factories, and government be able to assist. By so doing, we'll be able to reduce.
Like things you buy for, let's say, for instance, 100 is like 300 naira, and it's so expensive, especially transportation. Coming from Cuba to here, I spent almost like 1.7 just to come, talk less of going back. So things are we just want the government to do something about it.
Everything they cost, many things they costly now, but now manage to manage.
I think putting a barrier in between market forces will equally, will bring a stop to this problem. But how do we do that? We are removing money from subsidy. Let's subsidize our products. Let's subsidize what we consume. Price control is the most significant. And how do you do price control? You have to own the market. How do you own the market? You have to be able to get this product to the marketers at a price that you will force them to sell them at what you want them to sell.
Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today. We are looking at the Nigeria's inflation rate. And my guests are still here with me. We have two economists in the house. And Dr. Tochukwu, you heard the reaction of people there. I saw you were just looking at them, and your countenance wasn't really palatable. Dr. Tochukwu, really, it wasn't really palatable. Now, I just really want to know. I know, like what Yusha said earlier, I know we need an intentional planning and religious implementation. You know, we've not, from what he's saying, we've not really had that in the past. Now, how much does global factors contribute to, Nigeria's inflation rate? Talking about like the other time you mentioned the war in Ukraine, and of course even the one that's going on right now between Hamas and Israel, the Palestinians and Israel, and of course the global commodities. So how much does it affect our inflation rate?
Well, we're open to shocks from most of these economies because we are import dependent, right? And along that supply chain, right, any shock in all those economies actually affect us. But in the last 2 quarters, we've not really had any significant impact. Even the Hamas war didn't really impact on us. You need to understand we also import from the US, right? And the inflation rates are actually depleting. That's going to be a good sign by third quarter of 2024, not now, right? We're going to see that impact with third quarter of 2024. But more of the problems we're having are endogenous, not even exogenous. Okay. Now, if you look at it, let's start with, I'm going to go on 2 perspectives here, right? Rule specificity, that's with regards to the CBN and the fiscal authorities, and then the FX market. Now, if you looked at the FX market last 3 weeks, when those backlogs were cleared, right, especially for the banks and the airlines, right, at least 65 to 75% of those backlogs were cleared. And you know that the backlogs were earmarked on 4 subsections. We had Form A, we had capital remittances, we had dividend remittances, and we had the LCs, that's letters of credit obligations, right? When those were cleared, if you notice in the first 48 hours, Naira appreciated to as much as it's 15,809. But because of, again, policy impact analysis, which I always talk about, in less than 72 hours, we're back to 1,020 something. Today, we're at 1,123 as at opening session this morning. Now, the problem is, as long as...
The parallel market you're talking about now?
Oh, yeah, the parallel market.
Not the official rate.
I mean, I'm sorry to say this, we don't use the official rate. The official rate is more like it's just for sure. Most rates are usually transacted on the parallel market. And the problem is because I just submit this here that the CBN should try to amend the Foreign Exchange Act, right? They should try and remove that stringency of flow of FX from the primary distributors, which are the banks, to other licensed IMTOs and other licensed or regulated players in the market, so that at least we can see a little flexibility in that market, right? But I mean, the foreign exchange is a little broader than that, so let's just keep that one side. Now, in terms of rules, specificity of rules, now the CBN, we are trying to mop up last year, right? I think late last year. And at the same time, they were also doing incentive programs. That's oxymoronic. How can you mop up with one hand and then do incentive programs with the other hand? You leave that role for other fiscal authorities. Because if your role is primarily for currency stability. You stick to it. So more often than not, the problem here is because you're trying to pursue two rats at the same time. You're not going to catch anything. You have to focus. So your aim now, they should open, even if it's a mandate next year, inflation targeting, inflation reduction targeting. US did it and there's no shame in it. Accept the problem, target it, and each institution, each of the various authorities should take their own role in fighting that. Aside that, we might be bringing up policies, but other organizations that are not in that same fight might just be augmenting and trying to help, but actually depleting the whole potential of what they're trying to achieve. So it's not an exogenous problem. It's actually an endogenous one for me.
Okay. So, Isha, just like I said earlier, Rishi Sunak had promised in January that they're going to halve the inflation rate by the end of the last quarter of the year, 2023. And today they have 4.6% from 10.7%. We're talking about willpower. He made a promise and they worked towards it and they achieved it. Now, how much do we need how much of that do we need in Nigeria? Because it's not just about, have we really made, okay, let me ask you this, have we really projected that, okay, between this period and this period, we're going to have this figure?
We have projected before, but presently because of nightmares in some of our policies, we cannot project. When we depend on crude oil sales and still believe of importing PMS refined at a price that we don't know. These are the consequences of those decisions. Not just merely looking at the UK. UK understood, it's from the Treasury, Sunak, and he understood the figures. Not only understanding the figures, knows the right policies to hit the figures, and they are doing that. Nigeria, a group of individuals come with policies. The same group of individuals come with counter policies. Look at the CBN redesigning policy. Look at the statement by the bank again of taking back the old currencies after wasting a complete year. You remember we said it in this house that it was good policy, but it was not timely, and at the end of the day we have seen the consequences. These are some of the things that are taking us back.
So what's the way forward now?
The way forward is for the monetary and fiscal authorities to understand their role. The bank should understand that they have a role in maintaining price stability. That's the first role of the bank, to maintain price stability. And in maintaining general price stability, you look at the money supplies, where you look also at the exchange rate management. Once you are able to maintain that, you are going for success. The second aspect is that we must understand that we are importing PMS at a high price. And importing that PMS at a high price, it has a multiplier effect in all general price level in our economy. So there is need for moderation. We cannot shy away. Just the way that pointed out by Dr. Tochukwu, there is an intervention to clear ABC in order to maintain liquidity or to make the system more effective. The same thing must be applied.
Okay, so I'll give Tochukwu just 30 seconds now to tell us what is the way forward, because we know a lot of the problem, but how can life be better for Nigerians?
So first, I've been shouting this one for a while. Reduce trust deficit between the citizenry and government. First, all those, in quote, interventions that they are giving for subsistence farming, it's not going to work. Food inflation is one of our major problems. We need to go mechanized. Just accept it. Don't bring money for people to go and buy whole and this thing. No. Mechanized farming, one. And then secondly, in order to reduce that trust deficit again, there should be transparency with regards these incentives that are being done. And everybody should know their role. The CBN should know their role. The fiscal authorities should know their role and put out a plan. Put it to Nigeria and show them. This is what, this man said it's half, but we are all testifying in Nigeria. Show us what you want to do. Don't be saying we will. Put it in numbers, put it in figures, show Nigerians and start living the part. Don't say one thing and be doing another thing. It makes people not to want to do it because we are the ones that will make it work, not just the government. If we don't play our own role because we don't trust them, nothing will work, guaranteed.
Well, thank you very much, which means all hands must be on deck to ensure that the inflation rate comes down. That's what you're seeing in essence.
Yes, sir.
That's it on Nigeria today. We want to thank our guests for sharing their thoughts with us. We want to talk a very big thank you to Dr. Tochukwu for an economic analyst and a senior lecturer with the Base University of Abuja. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Contribution. And also Yusho Aliu, an economist. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution. And thank you for being part of the program. Nigeria Today is weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch this and other episodes on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Once again, thank you for watching. I am your carrier, Clinton. Goodbye.